So yeah, that's a big fight to look forward to. Another fight that's being talked about a lot at the moment, and Dan Raphael is certainly not among those looking forward to it, is Anthony Joshua against Deontay Wilder. A fight that's been in the talks about for years and years before they suffered their more recent defeats. And now it could be a way back for either or both men. But Dan Raphael said to Eamon last week that he couldn't give a shit about it. So no mincing words there. He brought out the big S word. Did Big Dan. He wasn't happy. He wasn't happy at all. Eamon, do you give a shit?
Yeah, I do give a shit about the fight. I think the perspective shift is different because Deontay Wilder was never this top-level, huge American star that crossed over into the mainstream like Anthony Joshua has in the UK. And, of course, we're a smaller island and the massive America is, and a lot of boxing, Vegas and other places were really kind of the stronghold for boxing, and boxing has missed like a big heavyweight or a real kind of fighter off the back of Floyd Mayweather to really kind of plant the flag for boxing in the USA. But in the UK, Anthony Joshua is big news. He's big bucks, and he's big stadiums, big arena type fights, even if he is at the tail end of his career. And that fight should have happened many years ago. You all know this. You've all heard this before. Their promoters have missed their opportunities. It's their fault for it, in my opinion, for not getting that fight off. And us getting it now, sure, doesn't hold as big of a shit as Dan Raphael mentioned as it once was, but it's still interesting because they're two heavyweights who can bang, and there's that jeopardy in there in the fight because of the power that they carry and the vulnerability that they've shown. Neither fighter has any real momentum as of right now. They've been halted in their last fights, and Zhang huge KO over Wilder, and Dubois with a hellacious KO over Anthony Joshua. One of them can kind of, off of the back of it, off of a big KO, can kind of scream to the rafters that I'm back and ready for a big challenge, and I'm still a big, heavy, concussive puncher, and I'm ready for a big shot. That's what's there for either fighter. I still think it will be an entertaining affair. I think it will be a great build-up between the two, and I would be looking forward to it. But I acknowledge it's just not as big as it was.
He said screaming to the Raffers, and I was going to make a joke, but I could only think of Nadal and Benitez. Any other Raffers? Isn't there a Raff who works for like Fight Hub or one of those channels as well? But I don't know if he's a Raffer.
There's that elusive Raff.
Yeah, gutted. But yeah, I don't give a shit about it, I've got to be honest. I mean, talking of things I don't give a shit about, segment 3 is coming up and Josh Hart will be joining us soon. Not that I don't give a shit about Josh Hart, I should hasten to add, but I don't give a shit about Misfits. Unfortunately, although I could have been made to give a shit by the fight that was swiftly called off between KSI and Wayne Bridge, as Eamon and I had discussed. But Eamon can fill you in on that conversation in the next segment. Yeah, I mean, I want to see Joshua come back. I think he's still very hungry, got a lot to offer. But do I want to see him against Wilder, who looked absolutely shot in his last 2 fights? I think Wilder got away with the performance before the first of the 2 because people said, well, he was inactive for a long time. It was a bad style match for him against Parker. And, we'll give him another chance. Maybe he still has got something left. And then he confirmed everyone's worst fears in the next one. And I don't see how he can bring that back now. He's got a style that's always relied on having that big equalizer. He's never been a great technical boxer, and he's not going to suddenly become one at this stage of his career. So if he hasn't got that ability to close the distance and the reflexes to get those heavy punches off quickly anymore, then it could be a pretty one-sided fight because although Joshua got dominated by Daniel Dubois, he doesn't look like a shot fighter. He just looks like a fighter who was taken by surprise by an incredible, young, gifted opponent and wiped out by a huge shot. And that can happen to pretty much any other heavyweight in the division, except perhaps Usyk. And we'll maybe find that out next year when later this year, if they meet again, Dubois and Usyk, that is. But yeah, I think Joshua's got, from the eye test, has got decidedly more left to offer than Wilder. And I think he'd go into that fight with a lot of confidence. I think it will still make money. So if that's what they're looking to do. But I'd rather see AJ come back, against I don't know, who would I like to see him fight? Someone who's still got, a fair amount of ambition, someone he can rebuild against. And if you want a bit of spice, maybe Jarrell Miller, he's coming off a decent performance in that draw. And I know we saw him lose to Dubois, but he gave him more rounds than Joshua did, for example. And they've had beef in the past, Joshua and Miller. That's a fight I'd quite like to see, certainly more so than Wilder, or the ghost of Wilder, as it would be. But yeah, that's my view on it. Please give yours in the chat. And just before I take my little hiatus, I'll be back in about 10 minutes after I've dropped my son at kickboxing. Want to remind you that we have got a poll out regarding Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. What is your reason for watching the fight? Is it their dads? Is it their beef? Is it the fight itself? Or will you just not watch it? Let us know in the poll. We'll read out the results at the end of the show. And talking of Misfits, which I won't be doing, we've now delighted to be joined by Josh Hart. Josh, I do give a shit about you, mate. I wasn't talking about you.
Understood.
Yeah, so don't leave. But yeah, you and Eamon can take over the mantle now. And yeah, let's talk about Bridge, KSI, and everything else from a fun weekend in Manchester.
Yeah, I'll take over the reins here. Danny, looking forward to your return soon. So I was there in Manchester for the latest iteration of the Misfits boxing card. Before I get into that, though, we've had some breaking news just before Seconds Out Live went live. If we can get the statement up. Josh, whilst Vinny is preparing that statement, I'll let you get your vocal cords ready. Read it there. I don't know if you're able to catch it, but go ahead and have a little read of Wayne Bridges' statement as he pulls out from the fight against KSI. Vinny, get it up.
Need it to appear first. That many children look up. Oh, it's disappeared. It's back. My opponent is someone that many children look up to around the world, including my kids. I hope one day he will look back on this differently. I personally don't want to be involved in these exchanges. I will no longer be fighting on 29th of March. I'm still looking out for my next big challenge and have some exciting things coming up in 2025. Thanks for all the love. The support has been overwhelming. I want my friends and family to know how special they are. Deep down, I know this is the right thing to do.
So that was the statement from Wayne Bridge. And just seeing it, we were kind of waiting for information as to who KSI's opponent would be. And we're expecting that pretty soon. The cat sort of like let out the bag moments before fight night, in that it was reported by, I think, Daily Mail and The Sun. A little bit surprised from other reporters in the scene as to it landing on Wayne Bridge when there was the rumors it could have been someone of Nick Diaz or Luke Rockhold or someone else. But they went with Wayne Bridge, and it seemed to be received, I don't know, maybe not the way it was expected, in that it being Wayne, although Wayne has fought before, I think, in a charity event. He hadn't had any fights since, and at 44, although he has an athletic background playing football for many top clubs and for England as well as their chief left back in his pomp, Wayne was still a surprise choice. And then KSI took to the mic to invite Wayne Bridge into the ring and then pull out a diss from more than 10 years ago regarding a encounter between Wayne Bridges' then girlfriend or fiance, I think, or maybe even wife it was, and John Terry, which caused him a lot of distress. And there was that famous non-handshake. Josh, I'll bring you in. What was your reaction to seeing KSI calling out Wayne Bridge, the interaction between the two in the ring, and then the subsequent pull-out by Wayne now because of what was said?
Well, obviously, I sat down and watched the whole show on Saturday. So, looking around when KSI said he had an announcement, I'd seen the reports earlier in the day that Wayne Bridge was the front runner, but I kind of didn't want to believe it. I wasn't really sure on whether that was the right fight. I know everyone has their issues with influencer boxing and whatnot, but you want to see these guys at least try test themselves. Okay, yes, it's not about, fighting for world titles or anything, but these are people that are trying to change their life. But KSI always talks about wanting to fight these big names. We've seen him mention, the likes of Conor McGregor. He's mentioned Nate Diaz. He's mentioned Jorge Masvidal. He's mentioned all these names that Darren Till probably went on to mention as well in his quick post-fight interview. And yeah, Wayne Bridge just really wasn't that name that we expected, especially when it's someone who hasn't exactly been in the limelight as of recent either. When you talk about having one of the biggest faces of social media and crossover boxing, you want to see them fight, I should say, people you wouldn't really expect them to see. And Wayne Bridge is one of them, but you want to see them fight the relevant people, not someone who's retired, just getting on with their everyday life now and doing bits here and there. So I wasn't a fan of the Wayne Bridge fight personally. The interaction, I feel like you kind of expected KSI to bring that up. I think it's one of those things that a lot of people expected reading on social media. Again, people said not really shocked by KSI bringing this up with Wayne Bridge. So that's that. And then the pullout, I think it's the right thing. I think whether it is actually because Wayne Bridge isn't happy with the comments, which could very well be the reason and be the legit reason. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of it is due to the backlash and the reaction the fight has received. And it really wasn't in the positive light in a lot of people's eyes. A lot of the people who follow the crossover boxing scene, and not many people were happy with this fight. They said this is a bit of a letdown. KSI said, in 2025, he wants to do things that people are going to watch. And he wants people to be watching him at all times in these big occasions. And I just personally don't believe Wayne Bridge would have been that person to bring the eyes onto it. I'm sure we'll still see KSI go ahead and fight on March 29th. But as to who, I'm not sure. I'd like to see Darren Till. Lee Eaton has already stuck the interest out there and said Darren Till will be ready to fight. I'd say make it happen. Darren Till versus KSI, massive fight. It's a huge fight. So I'd say if you're going to make a fight next for KSI, make that one. There's plenty around it now. We know what Darren Till's about. Let's get it on.